Very good evening. It's 9:38. This is Patrick Christie tonight with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Now, the proposed law to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales was introduced to Parliament today. Under the proposed legislation, those who wish to terminate their lives must be expected to die within 6 months. Two independent doctors must agree that the person is eligible, and then the judge will have to take evidence from at least one of the doctors and could question the terminally ill person themselves before making the final call. Although a doctor may prepare the fatal substance, the legislation states that the person who wishes to die must self-administer that drug. So Kim Leadbeater, the Labour MP who's put forward the bill, has said that the new proposed legislation ensures the strictest safeguards in the world. Well, joining me now is the author, Paul Carroll. Good evening, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us. So your story is fascinating. It is unusual. Tell us about the journey that you've been on in regards to this topic.
Absolutely, Bev. Well, I'm a convert because about 6 years ago I actually joined Dignitas and signed up as an insurance policy. I wasn't ill, but I suppose I was just planning ahead. And I joined thinking that if I ever needed this escape route, if my health deteriorated to such a point, why not sign up now? And by the way, it's incredibly easy to sign up for Dignitas. But then I went through...
But let me just ask you, Paul, that is some spectacular forward planning there, and that is quite dark, but I quite like your willingness to take control of that situation very much. How old were you then?
Mid-50s.
OK, and in good health?
Yes, good health. Still am, thankfully, touch wood. But my partner's younger than me by 15 years. We were doing our wills. So we were doing a bit of paperwork, and this came up. And insofar as what would it be like for you, my partner, to look after me if I reached dementia? My mother had dementia at that point as well. So that, it played in. But having signed the forms, we sort of forgot about those. It was like the insurance policy if you ever get broken into.
Did you have to pay anything, Paul? Did you have to pay anything? Sorry to interrupt you, but did you have to pay to sign on?
Yes, it's a signing on fee, yeah. It's about, I think it was 200, it's about £200.
Right.
Swiss francs, one-off payment, and you could renew that. But again, it was to give you peace of mind that you'd done something about it if you ever needed it. But really, I hadn't thought it through, I have to say. And then my mother passed away, my mother-in-law passed away very quick, and that started to turn my mind on this completely. My mother was in her early 90s, had suffered from dementia, but was a happy soul, and she clung on to life as long as she could. Unfortunately, my partner's mother, at the age of 69, was diagnosed with cancer, and the treatment didn't work, and within 11 months she passed away. But during that, which was obviously very harrowing, as many people know who've seen loved ones pass away and suffer, at no point during that process did we ever think we wanted to accelerate that end. And certainly she didn't. She clung on, as long every breath that she took. So this all fed in, and I decided at that point I wanted to write a novel where I picked 4 people who decided to embark on this assisted death route. And so I was looking at the different reasons that might go in there, with a view to basically testing the reader, really, as to what would they do in those circumstances. Did they agree with the circumstances those people had got into and elected for an assisted death? Would they beg these characters to change their mind and not go through with it? And it is, Shaking Hands with Elvis, it's a black comedy. And people say, oh, can you really write something that's satirical about such a sensitive subject? But it is interesting that a number of people come back to me and reviewed it and said, listen, I learned so much more about assisted dying and where I would stand on it. And they were changing their minds. It's not pro or
And because what's your we're a bit short on time, Paul, which I'm gutted about because I think the story's fascinating. But what's your main concern, that it will be abused by people, by the living, the well?
I think in writing the book, I did lots of research into all the countries around the world where assisted dying was legal, and that rang a lot of alarm bells ringing. And I'm glad it's been debated in the UK, because I think it does need to be aired very, very thoroughly. But I think whilst it's a very emotional argument, and it's easy to say, this person, do you want to see this person suffer? You're inhumane if you say you won't allow assisted dying. But if you look at the figures of the number of assisted deaths in the other countries, I think people would be surprised. It's 4% of deaths in Canada now within literally 8 years. What would that translate to in the UK? So I think Parliament needs to say how many assisted deaths they would anticipate a year. The other thing is the pro-assisted dying lobby don't agree. So the current legislation under proposal suggests 6 months left to live, 2 doctors, a judge, although how you do that in 6 months, okay, practical issues. But there are a greater number of people, say with longer-term illnesses, neurological illnesses, depression, mental disorders, who say, well, hang on, we've got the same right. We're happy, we're as miserable in life as you are.
Yeah.
We've got to endure it longer.
Well,
and the legal challenges will.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a complicated issue. Paul Carroll, thank you so much, the author of a book on that issue. Now, still to come this evening, the former Labour advisor John McTernan sparked outrage last night after he made these comments on this very show with Patrick.
If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
I'm going to tackle that at 10 o'clock. But first, Keir Starmer's just signed us up to yet another climate goal. Can we really trust him when he says that he won't force Brits to change their behaviour to reach net zero? Climate scientist Professor Christian Dunn joins me next. Don't go anywhere.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my